Welcome to All Pro Football Data. My name is Jim Coburn. In today's episode, we're talking about AFC South data-based power ranking. So in today's episode, we'll be discussing the top teams in the AFC South based on data. So we're going to look at the rankings based on past approximate value performances of the roster, free agency additions, database grades with incoming rookies, and the age of the roster. So this is sort of a forest instead of the trees perspective. So I graded all of the teams in the NFL based on their data, based on all that kind of stuff. And if you want to learn more about that, you can check out other videos on my channel. Or go to my Patreon page at patreon.com/jcoburn to kind of get a better insight on these types of things. But this is just a general data score. So this is sort of also like a dynasty ranking. So there could be really great individual performances on this team, and I'm not going to deny that individuals can help a team look better than what they actually are. But this is about the depth of the team. This is about the talent they have at each position. It's about all those kinds of things. So just remember that when you look at the rankings, is that it's not about individual players. It's about the depth and all those other sort of things. So all that stuff out of the way, let's get to number 4 on this list, which is the Tennessee Titans. The Titans made a lot of solid free agency moves and drafted relatively well this year. However, the roster as a whole remains questionable. The defense is stronger than the offense, and however, unless Will Levis can do his best Ryan Tannehill impression, this will be a down year. I think when you look at the data for this team. So the biggest thing to me when you look at the team-based rankings, you look at the quarterback position, they would rank 32 out of 32. Again, this is based on data. This is based on how Will Levis tested pre-draft and how he's performed post-draft. Again, I understand some of you guys might go, you're a hater, you're not giving him a shot and all that kind of stuff, and I'm fine with that. Again, I'm just based on what he's done in his past, and his past has not been exceptional. Then, of course, you get the running back position. Of course, Derrick Henry flew the coop to go to the Ravens, and as a result, the talent there is not the best depth wise. Now, I do like the running back individual running backs that they have there, but the overall talent and the depth is not really there. Wide receiver position, similar situation. A lot of it comes down to age, though. DeAndre Hopkins, of course, is older. Calvin Ridley is older. So again, those types of players. I mean, yes, have they performed well in the past? Yes, but in terms of individual performances, the overall talent there, because of the age and everything else like that, lowers them a little bit because there's an increased chance of injury and increased chance of inconsistent play as a player gets older. So those are going to be some concerns. The tight end position is another area that is also not that great. And then, of course, you get to the offensive line, which is probably their strongest aspect on offense, which is improving. But the offensive ranks for this team are just not where you want them to be overall. So again, this is a projection, of course, but this is kind of how they project so far based on the free agency moves they made, based on the draft, and based on the data of the overall team. Then, of course, you get to the other ranks defensively. The edge position is a little weaker in terms of the depth there. Defensive tackle is pretty strong. Cornerback is strong. Linebacker, though, not so much. 28 out of 32. Cedric Gray could improve this if he proves to be as good as he is capable of. And, of course, the safety position is another area of weakness. Overall, defensive ranks would be 28 out of 32. I don't see too many scenarios where the Titans end up being the best team in the AFC South based on the overall talent, based on the fact that they have a lot of older talent that is more injury prone and the depth is not really there behind them. Based on all those aspects, I do have concerns about this roster. So again, I understand you'll have some Titan stands out there that will think it's ridiculous to predict this, but based on all the free agency moves as well. And again, they all made really good free agent moves. It's just this team is got a lot of holes to fill, and I don't really think they plugged them all like they needed to. Then, of course, you get to number 3 on this list, which is the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts have one of the best and well-constructed offensive skill talent groups in the NFL. However, the quarterback position is the biggest question mark. If Anthony Richardson doesn't take another step, the defense lacks the secondary to hold up in big games. So this was a very debatable spot for me when I was doing the data rankings for them. is when you look at the offensive skill position talent for the Colts, it's fantastic. The running back position is great. The wide receiver position, the tight end position, all those positions have a lot of talent. There are a lot of proven talent on this team on offense, and but the quarterback is the biggest question mark because based on data coming out, he did not test that well from a data perspective. And then you add in the inconsistent play when he started last year. Then of course he gets injured. And then he's coming back again. So this is a team that has a lot of positive things to it, but hmm, there's still that Achilles heel there at the quarterback position. So this is the team that could be the worst team in the AFC South as well, because of that quarterback position. Because it all starts at the top. If you don't have a quarterback that can be consistent, it doesn't matter how great the offensive skill talent is, there is going to be some issues there. So I think from this perspective, this is the biggest concern for the Colts on offense is what Anthony Richardson or doesn't, what he does or doesn't do is going to be a big impact here. Then, of course, you get to the defensive side of the football. The edge position, defensive tackle, linebacker are all solid positions, but the cornerback position wasn't addressed at all in the draft, which is a concern there. And then at safety is a little inconsistent there as well. So defensively, I think they will have their moments, but this is by no means a great defensive squad. And I don't really think the draft really helped them out 100% in that aspect to that. So I think Latu will have an impact, of course, on the edge position, but the cornerback position was a much more pressing need. And the data for the cornerbacks that they have currently at number one on the roster is scary to say the least from the data work that I do. So again, I think there are some positives here, but not the best roster. Again, that's why they're number three because of all these question marks here. Then of course we get to number two in this list, which I really had a hard time getting my brain wrapped around this, guys, because I really like CJ Stroud. I really do. Matter of fact, I love CJ Stroud. I think he's a fantastic young player. And honestly, if I could do a 1A, 1B, I would. But it was a slight difference between these two teams. It really was. It was really slight difference between these two teams. They all have strengths and weaknesses that are interesting. So I can see if you love the Houston Texans, make them number one. Again, if you're a Houston Texans fan, make them number one. I can't disagree with you because it's such a slight difference between these two teams. Even though you might not think that, I'm going to show you why. But in terms of the Houston Texans and the Jacksonville Jaguars, there are some weaknesses on both sides, but they are very strong teams in terms of from a data perspective. Now, the Texans as a whole do have some issues, but again, the quarterback could cover up a lot of those issues. But let's just get into it. So, team-based rankings for them. In terms of the quarterback position, I think they do have a top five quarterback on the Houston Texans right now in C.J. Stroud. The running back position, I think talent-wise and depth-wise, is not the best. When you look at from a past performance perspective, the data of those players as well, it's not the best. The wide receiver position as well, based on past performances. So Tank Dell, for example, didn't have a full season of production. Was he fantastic in individual moments? Was he really efficient in those individual moments? Absolutely. But he hasn't had a full season yet to really show he can be the guy full time. Same thing with Nico Collins. Nico Collins is a very early emergent talent for them. Of course, Stephon Diggs is a very strong wide receiver in terms of his overall career, but he's also somebody that is getting a little bit older. His play did drop off a little bit last year on the Buffalo Bills, which is kind of why they moved on from him to a certain extent, of course, with other stuff too. But again, I'm not denying the fact that the skill talent, which doesn't really matter a lot when you have a top five quarterback, but it is, there are some concerns health wise, injury wise. Offensive line is also pretty solid. So, the overall offensive rank for this team would be 13 out of 32 teams. But I do think that the quarterback that they have, and I think if you're just being wishful thinking that everything goes the way it needs to go, I think they could get into that top 10 area of the offense. But again, it's not the best talent overall. Again, I understand people might debate that, but it's based on data. It's based on past performance. It's based on the overall data talent they have from the pre-draft profiles that they have. and based on age. And when you take a look at all those factors, the skill position talent is not exactly where it needs to be. However, the defensive side of the football is phenomenal in a lot of different areas. The edge position, this is probably one of the best teams in the NFL in terms of their edge rushers that they have there. And then, of course, you look at the defensive tackle position, which is a little bit of a weakness. Linebacker wise is strong, cornerback is strong, and then, of course, safety is a little bit hit or miss. So they do have the potential to have a top 10 defense in the NFL this year, especially with the edge rushers that they have and the linebacker position there. So I like the defense. I really do. There are some concerns, but I do think the defense is a little bit better than the offense, which is a positive thing. It's a balanced team. So from that perspective, I do like them from that aspect. When you get to number one, the Jacksonville Jaguars, the Jaguars have enormous amounts of offensive talent now with lots of question marks on defense. So Trevor Lawrence really doesn't have any excuses at this point. The Texans are poised to take the crown this year, but the Jaguars have the talent to win the division if Lawrence can take the offense to new heights in 2024. So taking a look at the ranks here, the quarterback position in Trevor Lawrence, talent-wise, based on pre-draft profile, based on how he's actually performed in the past, he has the potential to be a top 5 quarterback. When you look at the running back position there, it's solid across the board. Wide receiver position is probably the best in the NFL in terms of the how young the talent is, in terms of their data potential. Brian Thomas Jr. in terms of what his potential is. All those things, it factors together into an offense that could be fantastic. Now the tight end position is weaker, but the offensive line is also pretty strong. So again, the Jacksonville Jaguars have the potential, based on data, of being the best offense in the NFL. Now, do they reach that? Coaching might affect things, all these kinds of things, but they do have a lot of offensive talent. And don't sleep on the Jaguars, guys. I think offensively, this could be the year that they really take another step and become one of the best offenses in the NFL. Now, when you get to the defensive side of the football, it's all over the place, man. The defensive tackle position is not that strong, but the edge rushers are strong. The linebacker position is a little questionable, is pretty strong, and the cornerback position is a little meh, and safety is a little meh. So defensively, they're kind of average, and I think between the Texans and the Jaguars, they have differences in that the Jacksonville Jaguars are a very offensive heavy team with lots of question marks on defense. Texans are a lot more balanced. There's a lot more balance to that team. And again, the rankings between these two teams is maybe like 8 versus 12. So the Texans were like the 12th best team in the NFL based on the data rankings, and the Jaguars were the 8th best team. So from that perspective, 4 spots, that's not a big leap to make. So again, if you like the Texans because they're more balanced, great, go with them. I think if you want to go out on a limb and take them, definitely, but don't sleep on the Jaguars offense, guys. And I think the Jaguars offense is designed to kind of take advantage of some of the issues that the Texans have offensively. So those are kind of well, not offensively, but defensively, I meant. So that's kind of the thing there. Now, in terms of the AFC South offensive ranks, I mean, when you look at the quarterback positions here, it's really between these two teams. It's between Jacksonville and Houston, Trevor Lawrence and C.J. Stroud. I personally like C.J. Stroud. I think there's more potential there for him in terms of his ability as a passer. Trevor Lawrence is a little bit higher just because of his rushing ability, what he can do with his feet. The running back positions, of course, is a little up and down. Wide receivers a little up and down. Tight end, same kind of difference. And then, of course, offensive line-wise, the strongest offensive line is on the Jacksonville Jaguars. So, again, there's a lot of fundamental things that are really good about the Jaguars on offense. When you go to the defensive side of the football, it's a little bit all over the place. But overall, this is kind of how I view the AFC South. I think it's really going to come down to the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Houston Texans. The Texans are poised to take the crown. I can't really deny them that because they do have a more balanced team. They're constructed a lot better, but do not sleep on the Jacksonville Jaguars, guys. Don't do it because they have the potential based on the data that I was able to do on them to be the top team. They really do. Now, the defense is a little wonky, but offensively they can and will have the ability to outscore people. So definitely pay attention to that. So overall, this is my overall feelings about the AFC South, and this was, of course, based on data. You can check out my other work at patreon.com/jcoburn. Also check out my X, formerly known as Twitter account at Geometrics. And I'll see you guys in the next episode. Peace.